You see, every young successful driven kid who's just out of university wants to conquer the world, thinks there's a roadmap, thinks there's a methodology. He's just got to kind of find out what the secret handshake is. No, it doesn't really happen that way. It's much more complex. Cartoons especially are very good at distilling what matters really quickly. So you can kind of put values into your painting that can be telegraphed really fast. See, when art works, you feel it. You don't have to think about it. You go, aha, like a good punk song. You didn't have to explain why it was brilliant. You just knew it was brilliant.
So, Hugh, it is Meet the Renegades, and what we'd start by asking is, as you know, we love to speak to people who think a bit differently. And there are three kind of pillars, if you like, of the Meet the Renegade brand, and they're inform, illuminate, and inspire. Let me begin by asking you, what, if you were to be informed, where do you go and what do you look at?
If you really want to be inspired and informed, you read the classics. You read Cicero, you read Julius Caesar, you read Shakespeare, you read George Eliot, you read Tolstoy, because the Titans really know how the world works, I think. But I mean, that's kind of that's because, I guess I'm an artist, so I believe that, human nature doesn't change, and we all kind of have the same avalanches coming at us every day of our lives. So, the human condition is always the human condition. It doesn't really change too much, I suppose.
And then I'll ask you about illumination. What if you want illumination? And I know that you love the classics and you'd go back there, but if you want to find out and do a bit of inquiry, where'd you go?
I used to go to museums. Like I live in Miami, and so there's like a big art community here. A lot of painters, contemporary art, like what you have in London, I suppose. And that's okay. But where I go is if I really just want to put myself in a good mood, I look at design magazines and graphic design. Like illustration. Illustration is actually really hard to do well. And I love the kind of the algebra of illustration as opposed to the Sturm und Drang of, most contemporary art, which is fairly, contemporary art's a wee bit too self-involved for me to find it interesting for very long, I suppose. Whereas with graphic design, I feel like they're trying to interface with the real world in a meaningful way, artistically, and that's like really interesting because I think whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to make it relevant to the world you aspire to live in.
So can you remember a clear moment, when you were sitting there thinking, I've got 5 pens, I've got a pad of paper and a laptop, and actually I can make a career out of this?
Yes, I do, actually. Well, I don't know if you know this, but when I first started doing my drawings, I was doing it on the back of business cards, because I was living in New York. I was working in advertising in New York. And this is, 17, 18 years ago. And I used to go around the bars and the cafes and stuff and just sit on park benches and just draw on the back of business cards. And I made quite a big collection of them. And I was sitting at a bar one day in the West Village in New York. And I started doing some basic arithmetic that, after paying rent and paying taxes and paying to live in New York in my advertising job, I took home money in my pocket, about $100. And to do that, I had to work in an advertising agency, which, as you all know, is kind of like can be a big old nightmare, very hard work, meetings every day, all this boring stuff you have to deal with. I had to do all that for $100. And then I look at one of my little business card doodles, and I said, you know what, I bet I could sell one of these for $100. It'd be a lot easier than working at a bloody advertising agency. And that was in the late 90s. And then the other thing was, about 2 years later, I was kind of broke and unemployed because of the recession. And I thought my cartoons would never be popular, whoever, the Gambles or Steve Bell in The Guardian or David Shrigley up in Scotland. But, I'd just be like this kind of obscure dude, not allowed into the club, let's put it that way. And I said to myself, well, I don't need to belong to the member of the club, the Fleet Street Club or the media club. What I need is 10,000 people a year to give me money, like a t-shirt or a book or a postcard. I don't care. I just need that 10,000 people, and I can do that on the internet. And that's what I did.
A lot of the work that your work has that kind of contrarian feel to it, and there's one mantra that you have which we love, which is the ignore everybody mantra. Just talk to us about that.
Okay, well, that was a something I wrote a long time ago, turned into a book. And the mantra, the ignore everybody, it had like 40 aphorisms in it, but the two I take away, one was ignore everybody. In other words, when you have a great idea, nobody else can tell you whether it's good or not. Only time will tell. The second one is your great ideas will have lonely childhoods. They're gonna have to gestate in their own kind of lonely little existential hell, and then one day something will happen, hopefully. And I think when you have an idea, like whether, and I don't care what the idea is, whether to start a new financial service, whether you want to, pursue some kind of scientific theory or be an artist or have an idea for a book or a screenplay or something, there's going to be this initial lonely childhood of that idea, and you just have to build your life around weathering that. And I think certainly with the art students, they're expected to be very flash and glamorous when they're 20 years old because they're going to St. Martin's or whatever. And when they're by the time they're 24 and they're still in the dole and they're feeling very depressed, and you kind of think, well, yeah, kid, that's normal. It's not like how it is in the magazines. When you have a great idea, nobody else can tell you whether it's good or not.
So there's two bits to this next question, which is firstly, where do the ideas come from? And I mean that specifically for your work. But then the bigger point is, where do ideas come from?
If you find out, let me know. I notice as I get older, it's like we're all interested in what we think is successful behavior. So, when you remember when you're a teenager, you're saying, well, if I say this thing to a girl, will I have a girlfriend? Probably not. Okay, I better not say that. You're kind of imitating. You're trying to various pickup lines on girls and stuff, or you're trying to be cool by wearing the right clothes or listen to the right records. And human beings, even subconsciously, will always try to imitate what they think is successful behavior. And so, I think what I'm doing is I'm trying to figure out, like anybody else, okay, what works and what doesn't. I've always been really interested in what motivates people. Why are you doing that? Why are you going to Cambridge to study math as opposed to going to work for your dad in the city of London? Or why do people work in offices? Or why do people join the army? Why are some people mean? Why are some people nice? To me, it's fascinating what drives us, I suppose, and our kind of emotional landscape that informs that drive and that decision making. And that's where the ideas come from. Watching people, thinking about what people are scared of and what's driving them and what's motivating them.
So one thing that not a lot of people talk about is the intent behind a motivation, and whether that's well intentioned or whether it's there fundamentally as a self-serving drive, if you like. Have you given it any thought?
I think about it every day, especially for my clients. 'Cause we work with a lot of big clients, we have Microsoft's a lovely client of ours, Rackspace, and it's kind of interesting when you try to go macro and think about a guy like you who decided to do a startup or whatever. I totally get that, or the guy, your friend at school who dropped out of society to become a novelist. I totally get that. But when you make that exponential, when you have like 200 people or 300 people, or like in Microsoft's case, 100,000 people, and trying to harness that kind of collective sense of purpose, that's really interesting. Because we're not all just doing it for the paycheck. We all have this kind of we all have our own individual narratives we're trying to negotiate, and we're all trying to kind of be on the right team. We want to be on the winning team.
There's been an awful lot of chat about meaning and purpose and doing things that matter. And an awful lot of corporates have paid that lip service. Seems to me that a lot of the work that you do with clients, you genuinely, well, firstly, you mean it, and you genuinely want to change cultures. But that's possibly the hardest thing in the world to do.
But that's what makes it so valuable. Because even if you just tweak the culture 1%, you're creating a lot of good. I don't expect to be able to, walk into Microsoft or British Petroleum and just like say, everybody change right now. But if I could make, or if we can help make people understand the meaning behind their why they turn up for work every day. That's a lot of value. There's a guy called Sandy Pentland. He's a professor at MIT, and I had the great pleasure of meeting him about a decade ago. He did some research on behavior affecting outcomes, and he noticed that body language affects 40% of any sales call. In other words, if you're standing kind of confident and erect, you'll sell 40% more product than you kind of walk in like a dweeb. And so even if somebody feels a bit more pumped up about their job, they're going to sell more. It's a bottom line thing. You know, what we do matters. It's like I'm not there to like convince some naysayer. I'm there to make effective people more effective. You know, well, the guys in the corner griping at the pub, let them do it, you know, because what else are they going to do? The people who get it, and you know, and the people want to just like complain. Well, they're going to complain anyways.
There's a guy called Viktor Frankl who wrote that book, Man's Search for Meaning, and he says,
"Oh, is that the guy in the concentration camp?"
Yeah, he survived the concentration camp, and then came out. And you'd think a man who's been through that kind of experience probably knows a little about life and a little about meaning. And so he wrote this book, and the kind of quote that jumped out of it for me was that success, like happiness, can't be pursued; it must ensue. And it only ensues when one dedicates oneself to a cause greater than oneself.
Yeah. There's a Buddhist monk, a Western guy. He's actually from Minnesota, I think. You know, a Caucasian guy called Lama Marut. And he said, you want to be unhappy, think about yourself. You want to be happy, think about somebody else. And that's true. You want to go back to the Church of England, you know, 'tis more blessed to give than to receive. I mean, that's what Jesus was talking about, I suppose. So yeah, and that's why I remember hearing that phrase in chapel when I was a kid, thinking that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. But now that I'm older, yeah, you're right. It's kind of I think you're much happier if you see your life as a giving force. You're creating stuff. But the thing is, all this, you know, when I talk to young business students or young artists, it's like it doesn't ever get answered. It's always under constant negotiation. It's like a marriage between you and your own potential. You know, you're always having a dialogue with your own inner potential. You're always having a dialogue about what matters. You're always in opposition with your own set of values. So there's no like laundry list of things you gotta get, and you'll be happy. You're always having a dialogue with value, and it never ends. You know.
Under the protection of our freedoms, American labor, management, and capital, the greatest production team in the history of mankind, have made the United States the industrial master of the world. Capital must continue to provide industry with the funds to create new tools and plants. Labor and management must continue to increase the production of better goods at lower prices, so that more people will be able to buy the things that make life easier and happier for all of us.
The Social Network, the film, basically is the Wall Street, really, for a lot of people, for their generation. They watch Zuckerberg get rich with Facebook. And what's happened is this sort of, I'd say, egotism with nitroglycerine under it, thinking that the all-American hero or the all-British hero or the all-male, female hero, whatever it may be, can come out with an education or drop out and then go into the world, suddenly make oodles of money, and then retire rich, and that is the kind of redefined American dream. And as we all know, life has different plans.
Yes. Well, that what they're not telling you is all the guys who tried to do the same thing and didn't make it. They don't make movies about them. And then, it's funny. When I was 18, there was a cartoonist up in Edinburgh called Hugh Dodd. He's still around. He does watercolors of golf scenes. And I said, what's the secret, man? Because I'm 18 years old. I'm interested. What's the secret? And he said, well, my boy, it's not talent, it's continuity. He said, anyone can draw a great cartoon once, but to do it every day for 20 years, you got to work on it for a long time. So I think success has to have you can either wait to get lucky, win the pools or whatever, get discovered. I hate that word.
And do you think the media has depicted a story where actually there can be a kind of chosen one moment?
Oh yeah, because that's what they're selling. It's kind of like when you look at the celebrity industry. These people who like work in fish and chip shops and people who like empty trash cans, they're created this theater, this illusion that there's some kind of magical world out there, full of these fabulous people like whoever, Ian Hislop, or Boris Johnson, and that's the closest glimpse of success, big success they're ever going to actually know about, and that's not real. That's just like pantomime. But that's only one. That's a very shallow dimension of what success is, I think. But it's the only one that journalists seem to be intent on purveying to these people.
The tide's going out on that, though, in the sense that people are starting to quickly see through it and understand that back in the day you could get out of for instance, mining villages of Wales if you could play football or box. Now you've got to sing on various talent competitions to be able to move forward. In all your work, what you are doing, though, you're inspiring people by saying to them, really, you don't have to think that way. You can think differently about success.
I had a really great moment in Newcastle, up in the north of England about 15 years ago, where I met this lovely chappie. And he had one of those, those kind of like three-wheel mini lorries the Italians make. The kind with they're like little, not Citroens.
Yeah,
they're Italian.
They're called a Piaggio Ape. I've got my own one.
And it's like what he did is he turned one of those into a cappuccino bar in the train station, And so he went to the train station and said, look, I'll give you 300 quid a month for that patch on your train station. I'll just turn up every day with my Piaggio and make a mean cup of coffee. And that's what he did. I don't know how much money he made, but it was a living. And that's to me, that's real success. That's not waiting to win Britain's Got Talent. You know what I mean? That's not showbiz talent. That's real love, and that's real application, and that's real craft, and that's real dedication.
Hugh, it's been a real pleasure. I'm conscious you've given us so much of your time. We're a big fan of your work, but so thank you very much. But one of the things that we do with Meet the Renegades is ask someone to pass the baton. So I'm going to ask you, who would you recommend that we go and speak to next? And the only criteria, by the way, is that it has to be someone who thinks differently and you find inspiring.
Seth Godin. Without question.